Hello everyone, I'm Eszter Vajda. Thanks for joining us and welcome to Hometown Talents and Treasures. Our goal is to introduce you to citizens who in their own unique way contribute to the betterment of society. They could be part of a charitable or faith-based organization, spend a lifetime giving of themselves, or do small acts of kindness. Regardless, they are all hometown heroes. Our first guest is Tina Girdwood. Now listen to some of the activities she's been part of since she moved to Andover in the 1970s. Andover Recycling Committee, Treasurer, President, Andover Bancroft Elementary School, Member, PTO President, North Andover Country Club, Board of Governors, Andover Garden Club, Member, League of Women Voters, Massachusetts Society for Prevention of Cruelty and Children, Andover Dollars for Scholars, Andover School Committee, Andover School Building Committee, Andover Coalition for Education. Boy, what a list. You've been busy since you moved to Andover in 1970s.
Yes, I have been, and it's kept me out of trouble, I think.
How did you get involved in all of these?
Well, I was trying to think about that, thinking that might be a question you'd ask me. I somehow or other remember being outside one day with very small children, and a neighbor who often came through and walked through the backyard. And she said she was going to be off to a meeting the next day for Andover Recycling, and she thought I might enjoy it, so why not come along? And by the way, you can bring your kids. So I thought, well, okay, I guess that sounded like a reasonable thing to do, and so that was sort of the start. But it was wonderful that you could take your kids to the meeting, and that was sort of the beginning of my involvement with Andover Recycling. So that was literally the first organization that I got involved with, and that one thing led to another.
But mostly you've been doing a lot of education things.
Yes, eventually when the kids got into school, it was a natural thing to get involved with the schools. I think back in those days they had, what did they call them? Room parents or something like that, and so that each classroom had parents who were designated so that you would help bring a snack, or you would help find a volunteer, or help the teacher in some different way. And I remember getting a call from a woman that I didn't really know that well, but she knew, we were fairly new to town. We didn't have a lot of close friends at the time, but anyway, she knew me well enough to call me and ask me if I'd be the room parent for kindergarten, and I said, there's no way I can do that. I'm got a brand new baby. The girls were 5 years apart, and I said, and I'm breastfeeding. There's no way I can be running into the school. I couldn't imagine how I could possibly do any of those things. So needless to say, she convinced me that despite my excuse that I could actually help out. And so as long as I could be at home most of the time and make the phone calls that were needed for whatever the activity was.
What's amazing to me is that a lot of the things that you do are for education, but you've never been a teacher.
No, never a teacher.
Never in the school system.
Never even dreamt of being a teacher. So.
And yet you have been president of one of the big things that I'm very familiar with, obviously, is Andover Coalition for Education, and I should mention my sister's also on the board, but very focused on helping the school augment the school. Talk about ACE.
Well, I think even though I've never been a teacher, as I say, when you get involved in the early stages of your child being a new student at elementary school, it has nothing to do with being a teacher. It has all to do with being a parent and helping out, whether it's baking cookies or whatever the thing is, or chaperoning on a trip or something of the sort. So getting involved in the schools was easy, and yet at the same time, as I went along, because the girls were 5 years apart, I was at Bancroft for 12 years, and at that point, initially the first daughter was there through 6th grade. They hadn't changed elementaries to the 5th grade, so being involved in the schools, I was learning about education as our girls were going through that. So you'd go to PTO meetings and learn about different issues and whatnot.
And so
it was a very gradual learning experience for me.
So you kind of saw the areas that needed some help.
Right, and I think eventually becoming more and more involved with the PTO, and then eventually becoming president, which was sort of a fluke, but and then my interest with the MSPCC, the Mass Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, that also was not related to education or anything. The issue was significant, and yet what really got me there was had more to do with the fact that I had a good friend who asked me to be a board member. So eventually I think it all had to do more with learning how to be a board member, learning what the needs were for different organizations, whatever the cause was, whether it was schools or child abuse or whatever. So that, and in each case, I had to learn what the issues were, and that was interesting to me. So I was learning about children as we were trying to parent our own kids. So it was really more around issues, and eventually through training, you learn a lot about being a board member. You learn a lot about leadership and how these different groups are organized and what their needs are. So, and actually, eventually, I ended up taking a course at Radcliffe. They had the Radcliffe seminars at the time. I'm not sure if they still have them quite that way, but and I took a couple of courses in organizational behavior, 2 courses actually. So I became interested more in the sort of the, we might say, the management or the business side of some of these issues. And so for ACE, Andover Coalition for Education, that was in a way sort of a natural evolution after having been on the school committee, realizing the onset of budget shortfalls for the schools and the difficulties that they were having trying to find additional funds in order to maintain the programs.
And that was my question. The ACE is there to augment the school system. How have you seen the needs change through the years?
Well, I think the economic times definitely changed. Budgets became tighter for the town departments as well as the schools. And I was actually in the process of, I was getting off the school committee. I was finishing my term. But Tony James and Art Barber were members of the school committee at the time, and they were the ones who actually started the research to look at, well, how are other comparable communities doing? So they were looking at a whole group of communities. And as a matter of fact, the town manager and the Board of Selectmen were also looking at other communities to see, well, how are they managing some of the same shortfalls that Andover was experiencing. And one of the things that Art and Tony discovered was that many of our comparable communities have an educational foundation. And some of them are organized a little differently than we are. Some of them have a different mission that we have. But that was the genesis of realizing that, well, Andover at least should try it to see if it might work. And I would say 6 years later, we've been pretty successful and been able to assist the school system, K-12, with different projects that we funded.
And what are some of the specific projects? And again, you know, through the years, you see the budget shortfalls over and over again, and you see the needs piling up and piling up. And so how do you choose which program and which project to address or help?
Well, to start from the beginning, it's a little more complicated a story, but one of the first objectives that this group of people had, that eventually we put together a board of directors and started to fundraise. The first objective that we had was to see if Andover could benefit from the use of a grants coordinator. We had seen that other communities had been successful, and Andover, I think perhaps there was a perception that Andover's not going to get some of these grants. More needy communities would be more logical. And so, and yet when you looked at it, these other communities were being successful. So Andover needed to try. So we raised $45,000 in the first year so that we could give the funds to the superintendent of schools and have her hire the individual to be the grants coordinator. ACE did not hire the person, the superintendent did. And the best we could figure out, it really takes about 2 years for that position to figure out whether exactly how you do it, how to be successful and whatnot. So we promised that we would fund for 2 years that position. And once we raised the first $45,000, then the superintendent hired the grants coordinator, and Lisa Glickstein is still with us. So we're very pleased about that. But so that was the first objective, and sure enough, she has brought in over $2 million to the school system.
Wow.
And the key to that, which was so interesting, is that very often why Andover can be successful is if we partner with other communities, with other types of schools, whether it's
probably
a charter
also
school,
private,
whether it's a university.
partnerships.
So there's different ways of trying to find success, and Lisa's done a great job. So that was the first thing. And then ACE also, again, we're in tough times, budgets are struggling, and ACE really did not want to replace what had been cut or lost in the school system. And so we very specifically felt that that's the school committee and the superintendent and the town meetings' responsibility to fund the schools at the level that will be sustainable. And so we did not want to interfere with that, but what we wanted to do was to be able to give the superintendent an opportunity to find different places within different curriculum areas where $10,000, $20,000 might make a difference in trying to move the system forward or make a change in the curriculum that they were anxious to see happen that they could not fund through the budget. So it was not supplanting or replacing, it was looking forward and trying to find an area that where ACE could make a difference for the school system. So we very much work very closely with the superintendent of schools and also the assistant superintendent of schools who's in charge of curriculum. So what we fund, the ideas come from them, and then we work with them to see that they fit our mission. So it's a joint effort.
I want to read this quote from you. I think that the time has to be right for things to work out, the right time to take on a project or role in an organization, the right time for success to be accomplished, and luck. I've enjoyed my work with so many wonderful people, and seeing these organizations succeed. How lucky is that? Gives me chills. Gives me chills.
Oh, it's been great. Yeah, it's fun, but it's always working with other people. It's I've been privileged to have people who have confidence in me to take on leadership roles, and I've been very pleased to work with great people with whatever the effort was. So it's been a nice ride.
You know, Tina, I've been to probably about half a dozen events throughout the summer, spring, summer fundraisers and so forth, and you're either being honored there, you're running the event, or you're supporting it. And I should mention that you are this year's Make a Difference Award service from the Service Club. Congratulations, and I know you've won many other awards, and we're so pleased to have you here, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. It's been a privilege. Thank you very much.
That's our show for tonight. Thank you to all the heroes out there for all that you do. Now, if there's someone or an organization you would like to nominate to be featured on Hometown Talents and Treasures, email me at the email address you see on your screen. Remember, it can be anyone. The important thing is that they selflessly donate their talent and time to help others. See you next time.